Thank you, Joanna. We're moving on. Our last speaker, Benjamin Hersh, coming all the way from California. So I'm appreciative that you, I mean, who else is from California? Who is from that side of the world? Who else? The first thing, yes, Amelia, I can see you raising your hand. So people are getting up and joining us. That's amazing. So Ben, the floor is yours.
Amazing. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben. I design things for a living, and today it's my pleasure to tell you a story about a time when I set out to design something truly great, and instead I ended up learning some valuable and humbling lessons about design. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of my career. Here I am, a starry-eyed young designer. The world is my oyster, and I've been cutting my teeth doing things like banner ads and other ungodly contraptions for startups that you've never heard of. And I felt in my heart that I was meant to do bigger things. I wanted to do innovative work, design with a capital D. I wanted to be inspiring and do all that stuff. So I go out looking for a startup to which I can apply my skills. And somehow I find a startup that is willing to take me as their first designer. And this is a publishing startup, a good fit for me because I'm a bit bookish. It's something like Netflix for books, where you'd pay them a recurring fee of $10 to get access to a catalog of stories. But this is not just any startup in this space. This was founded by a best-selling author, someone who I had so much respect and admiration for. And they had built together a team of incredible writers and editors around the world, putting together a really great catalog of stories. And it wasn't just that it was high quality, they were winning national magazine awards. They won a Pulitzer Prize. When I joined, Fast Company said that they were one of the most innovative companies on earth. And you can imagine I was beyond elated to be working on this kind of thing. And so what do when you want to do innovative work and you join the most innovative company on the planet? Well, this was around 2010. So the natural answer is you create an iPad app, because the iPad was pretty new. And when you think about what editorial design demands, it makes so much sense because it's got a giant screen for, bold editorial imagery and luscious typography. And it was new and interesting. And we were just so excited. And I start to think, okay, innovative company, innovative platform. I want to do something bold and innovative myself. So I start to think and think and think, ruminate a bit. And I look around and start observing the habits of people around me, my own habits when it comes to reading. And I start to identify certain patterns. Like, I started to notice that there's a certain type of reading that you might do when you're sitting around in your morning commute on a train, back when we had morning commutes. And there's a different type of reading that you might do when you're sitting on the toilet. And there's another type that you might do when you're sitting around on a leisurely Sunday morning. And you read different things for different reasons, often different lengths. And I started to build this vision for something which looked like this. The idea is that what if you had a platform that could actually like cultivate a reading list that's bespoke to your day, your schedule, moment to moment, you're getting exactly the reading you want tailored to what you're doing in that moment. And I imagine that time is actually the most important aspect of this. So I imagined a slider where you could put your thumb on it and drag it across the screen, and you'd get different lengths of time that would filter the stories that you have to read so that you're always able to get something that matches the moment you're in. And I fell absolutely in love with this idea. It was easy because it was my own. And I start to walk around evangelizing this. I am so excited that I've come up with this idea. And I will tell it to anyone who will listen. So I sit down with a junior PM who I'm working with, and I say, get this. There's a thing, you put your thumb on it and you drag it, and it changes the length of the stories that you see. And this PM stares at me for a while, one of the most suspenseful moments in my career to date. And after a good long thing, she's like, bullseye. This is something that you should really invest more time into figuring out. Let's try to figure this out. And so I am just absolutely elated. This is like all the validation I need in the world. So I go to the next person in line, one of the editors that we're working with, and I say, check this out. You put your thumb on the thing and you move it and you get stories that are a different length. And the editor, he has to think it out. We talk through it a bit. They say, you know what, this is actually really interesting. No one else is doing this kind of thing. This could be a really interesting editorial thing where we like bring in different types of stories and like you're onto something. So I take this to the next person, the engineer, and I say, check this out. You put your thumb on the thing, you move it, you get different stories. We talk it out for a while, and the engineer says, you know what? I think I can actually build this. It's not that technically crazy. Let's do it. So I take this to the next person, the senior PM, the person who calls the shots. I say, check this out. Put your thumb on the thing, you move it, etc. Senior PM has a lot of questions about the business case, but we talk through the research. We say, you know what, this is actually a sort of innovative technological solution to a problem, and we decide we're going to go ahead with this and we're going to build this. So I take this to the head of engineering. You put your thumb on the thing, you move it, you get different stories. The head of engineering has a lot of questions. We sit down, we work it out. They realize this is actually a really scalable solution because otherwise we'd just be investing in machine learning and we didn't have the real data for that because it takes a lot of data and a lot of hard engineering to really do that well. But this was easy and it scales, so let's do it. I take this then to the head of marketing, a real rock star, and I go to the head of marketing and I say, check this out. You put your thumb on the thing, you move it, you get different stories. Head of marketing says, oh my God, this is brilliant. No one else is doing this. We can own this and it will be our brand. And then I take this all the way to the CEO, this famous writer, this person who I admire so much. And I'm realizing this is like the biggest moment in my career. I am pitching an idea to the CEO of a company. And oh my God, this is what it's all about. And I give the CEO my pitch. You put your thumb on the thing, you move it, you get different stories. And the CEO, in his wisdom, stares at me for a long time, thinking, digesting. And he says, you know what? Let's do it. Mind blown. Never in 1,000 years did I think I could talk to a CEO and actually get my idea out there. And oh my God, now we actually have to build the thing. And I was not prepared for this. It didn't occur to me that my bold, innovative idea would be something we actually had to execute. But we get into execution mode and immediately we run into some real challenges. I'll just share a few of them. Here's one. As I had envisioned it, the slider is actually just a filter, meaning that when you use it, all you're really doing is removing stories from the list, which is a really dumb way of helping the user navigate what's basically a database of thousands and thousands of stories. And then there's the fact that it's not enough to have the filter because what happens is it feels like things just move around randomly because there was no deeper editorial vision. Like, so there's a story that's 5 minutes. So what? You still have thousands of them. How do you surface the right ones? It felt completely random. And then there's the fact that this was early in the days of iPad OS. And so what happened was we had to bake our own animations for everything because we had no idea what an iPad app was really supposed to look or feel like. So we ended up reinventing a ton of wheels and investing an insane amount of effort in trying to do the absolute basics properly. And then there's the fact that often it didn't feel like anything changed when you interacted with the filter. And then there's the fact that a huge number of our stories in this database actually had no images, so it didn't matter what was happening. When you played with the filter, it just didn't look like anything was changing because it was all text in the same layout. And these are all serious issues, and we worked and we worked and we worked for a few months, and we resolved them one by one, and we finally make it through. And we end up with something that feels right. And I am so happy, so proud. This is an idea that I'd come up with. I pitched it. I worked through the whole system. We put this thing together. We solved so many technical challenges. We were doing the real innovative stuff. And then we start to ask some other questions, like, how the heck do you explain this thing to a user? Because when we had something like, what do you like to read? Short stories or, our stories were all kind of an hour or less, which means that they're all short stories. So when you move to something like 30 minutes, it's a less short story or a longer but still short story. We were running into a real challenge, which is that there was zero mental model for this kind of behavior. We had no shorthand to explain it to a user. And so we tried asking different questions. In what context are you reading? Commute, lunch break, leisure time. We started to run into other challenges with stuff like this because there was no editorial vision to back this up. And like, who's to say that a lunch read needs to be different from a morning read? We just ran into a lot of assumptions that we didn't properly understand. We actually tried how hungry are you, and you'd say just a morsel, a platter of hors d'oeuvres, a full meal. And I'm not kidding, we came so close to shipping this. You would not believe the silly things that a room full of smart people can convince themselves are the right answers to things. And at one point we were talking about cookies and other like little images. We were taking this way too seriously and trying way too hard to make this work. And eventually, drum roll please, we land on something that we think actually works, and it's how much time do you have? Which, simple, to the point, people got it. We did user testing. No one was confused by this. And you can imagine just my immense relief that this thing that I'd worked so hard on, my baby, was getting ready to go out into the world. It was all coming together. And then we decide, okay, we're ready to ship this. We send this off to Apple, and we wait for a day and we don't hear anything. And the second day comes and we hear nothing. The third day, nothing. We end up waiting for maybe a week or more, and absolutely nothing happens until one day we open up the App Store and there it is. Our beautiful app that we'd worked so hard on was out there in the world, and it existed. And not only that, but it was going well. Apple was featuring it aggressively as one of the best new apps, getting features around the world. We started getting written up in magazines as one of the best new apps. It was incredible and like going better than I could have possibly imagined. And it was the best thing. Like, I just could not believe my good fortune until nothing really happened. And what really happened next is we just crashed and burned very quickly. In our excitement to build the most innovative thing possible, we'd forgotten some very basic things. We were so in love with the idea that we never really asked the basic questions like, would anyone carry an iPad with them throughout their day? You may notice that the iPad is like this big. It does not fit in your pocket. It was just not a use case that anyone in the world had that we were designing for. It was bonkers. People had no reason to pay for it. It was a ridiculous idea and it took us nowhere, and we ran out of money and we folded as a business shortly thereafter. And so for all of our innovation, for all of our great ideas and execution, it was for naught. I hope that you've learned something from this story. What I've taken away from this is a lesson that you should never fall in love with your own idea. You always need to do the work and make sure that you're building something that people actually need. So thank you for listening to the story. Go out, design something that the world needs. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Thank you, Ben. That was quite insightful. Thank you. Let's unshare you so everyone can see. So, you know, I heard that the first rule of user experience design is that you are not the user. And I think that applies to this case. Anyone has a question or something, or comment, or they can relate? I'd love to hear. No?
I can say, I mean, I definitely can relate, having worked at Kodak, where there's a lot of stuff that we built that is in other products now. I guess I'm wondering, like, what did you take with you other than, you know, obviously we can't be objective about our own babies, but like, what else?
Good question. I am always, I think, the one who's most willing to sacrifice my own darlings now. I've learned that it's good to have a lot of ideas and not be too attached to any one of them until you learn that it's actually one that will solve a problem someone has. And then when you figure that out, you can believe in it all you want, but hold off until you actually make sure.
That reminds me of the Taoist farmer, right? Like, is this good in this moment, or maybe later? Or maybe I'll look back later and say, well, actually that was good, but it didn't feel good at the time. Thank you for sharing. Very relatable story.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Anyone or comment? No? Oh, But okay, so that was great. Thank you. I mean, that was all. That was all the speakers we have for today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us to participate in this. We're going to have a breakout networking session. Anyone wants to stay. But for now, I want to thank all the speakers who participated. And if people want to get to know each other.
Before the song came out, I'll show you
What's
guys.
that? Omri, you got to mute yourself. Okay. So yeah, so people stay with me. We're going to stay another half an hour if you want, but if not, thank you, and I will say